Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're doing an immersion, or I should say introduction into an immersion in alchemy, which is the sixth mastery in the sovereign way. Let's think of alchemy as a realm of consciousness and energy where true magic and reality meet. I'm going to give you, this is the most basic way to understand what alchemy really is. So you can write this down. Alchemy is a high-level spiritual dynamic. That's what it is. It's not actually particularly mystical. It consists of combining two ingredients. Number one, the philosopher's stone. That's structure. And number two, the elixir of life. That is the never-ending essence of spiritual life force. So structure and essence combining. That's what alchemy is. And the purpose of alchemy is to fuse these two elements together, the philosopher's stone and the elixir of life, to create a molecular shift that brings an outcome that is greater than the sum of its parts. In other words, and this is a phrase that alchemists use to demonstrate what we're talking about, turning lead into gold. So in traditional fantasy stories, you can imagine the alchemist with his beard and his petri dishes and his bubbling bubbles, and he's looking for the philosopher's stone, and he's found the fountain of youth, and he wants to combine the two so he can turn his lump of lead into a lump of gold. That's the two-dimensional cartoon version of what true alchemy is. But it's a good representation. We are combining structure and essence for the purpose of causing a molecular shift in reality that brings an outcome that's greater than the sum of its parts. In other words, it's healing. It's healing. So let's look at, we're going to do a quick recap of the series so far. We're in week number 6. We're going through each of the masteries in the sovereign way, and we're doing it in order, because order is a beautiful part of God's universe. And once you align with divine order, you have phenomenal cohesion and power. So let's look at the order in which we've gone through these teachings, because it's going to help set the framework in which we're learning alchemy. So let's look at it like this. Number 1, the first mastery in the sovereign way is remembering. Remembering the truth that transcends all time and space, that there are 3 elements in the universe: source, spirit, and substance. It's the Holy Trinity, and you are an individualized expression of that Trinity. And all things are individualized expressions of that Trinity. So remember that, that's remembering, and that's a key part of alchemy. So the second mastery, because once you remember that all things are source, spirit, and substance, you can develop the second mastery, which is recognizing the difference between truth and story, self and personality, essence and structure, home and house. And that leads you to the third mastery. Because once you remember that all things are source, spirit, and substance, and you recognized when you are in a crystallized subset of particularized reality, in other words, a story, then you can begin to develop the mastery of releasing. You can effectively release story, release falsehood, release structured paradigms, release error. You can become very effective in your forgiveness, in your instant mercy towards all things. So we've remembered that all things are source, spirit, and substance. We've learned how to recognize the difference between truth and story, essence and structure. We've learned how to release our attachment to structure. We're not fearing structure, we're just not attached to it. We understand that it is a form in God's great universe. And that leads us to the fourth mastery. So when you can effectively let go and release patterns and systems that belong to an outdated version of you, then you can effectively expand to increase your capacity to meet the challenges of life. So you become available for far greater challenges, which mean far greater outcomes, which means more adventures and deeper impact. So as you learn the mastery of expansion, you actually begin to consciously ascend on the path of conscious enlightenment. So this is the fourth mastery. And do you see already how ontologically these masteries build on one another and lead you deeper into God? So that's the fourth mastery, is expansion. But wait, there's more. That takes us into the fifth mastery, because when you're ready for expansion and quantum growth, you need to start honing your higher faculties and really conditioning your marvelous mind so it can process faster and smoother, more complex realities. Now you're ready for the sixth mastery, which is alchemy. That's where we are today. Because when you have the great spiritual authority that comes with cultivating these previous masteries, leading you all the way up and into genius, through genius and into alchemy, now you need to learn the principles for wielding that vibrational influence. You see, now that you've expanded your capacity for embodiment and you have a greater, deeper knowing of yourself and all things as a trinity of source, spirit, and substance, now you have very, very strong magnetism, which means that your magic becomes more powerful, which means you have more authority to initiate, activate, facilitate alchemy in the world. Now you need to have a framework for properly using it. Now, I wish I could teach you everything in this one class, but that's absolutely impossible. We can work together privately on this. We have a private 5-week course in sovereign Reiki, healing, miracle work, personal magic, true wealth, or you can join the Oasis, which is our private study group, and you can learn these things over time with a group. But for today, I'm going to give you as much value as I can cram into this hour. So for those of you who are here in the live Zoom room, after the teaching, we can really discourse and chew some of the meatiness together. And if you're watching this in the live stream on Facebook, or you're watching it later on in the library, then I'm going to give you as concise and powerful value as I can. And the purpose of today's teaching is to really get what true alchemy is. That's what we're doing. We're wanting to get it. I get it. So it's awareness that we're really getting here, where it's embodiment. If you think you already know what alchemy is, see if you can get it even deeper. Because if you think you already know, that means you don't know anything. Because spirit always leads you deeper if you're willing to come. Right? So who wants to learn some alchemy? Yes, it's unanimous. Everybody's ready for it. All right, here we go. Okay, let me tell you something very, very important. And this isn't popular. This is not a popular opinion, but it's truth. You are not creating with your thoughts. Your thoughts are not things. Your thoughts are electrical byproducts of a zillion subtle choices that you make in mind and energy, creating specific frameworks of prehension that guides the narratives in your mind. And your thoughts are indivisibly linked to your vibration, your body consciousness, and your spiritual maturity, but they are not in and of themselves creative. Thoughts are not in and of themselves creative. So you don't need to fear your own thoughts. You don't need to be afraid that if your thoughts go off down a rabbit hole, that you are about to destroy the universe. This is erroneous spiritual teaching. But thoughts are indicative of a total alchemy that's going on in your vibrational universe. And in the realm of consciousness called genius, which we immersed in last week, you have phenomenal creative power with your thinking, but it is very energy intensive. And even under the level of genius, you can force yourself, you can use force to train your neuro pathways and your energy system against the laws of magnetism, but that requires insane discipline, and it's an uphill battle immersed in false positivity, and it furthers the separation between you and God. Because what you're doing when you're trying to force yourself to think positive thoughts and retrain your neuro pathways because you're afraid of negative creation as a result of negative thought, what you're doing is bifurcating your identity. Instead, what you need to do is to come into what is, and that's what alchemy is. So you're not creating with your thoughts. Most of the time, you're actually creating with your magnetism. And your magnetism is a result of how cohesive, embodied, and integrated your enlightenment is. So in other words, to what capacity do you know your divinity? And to what capacity do you know the divinity of everything, of all energy, and of all elemental substance, no matter what it looks like? So, a much more graceful and pleasurable experience of becoming more magical is the sovereign way. Because here you enhance your personal magnetism with a knowing of spiritual law and a simple and cohesive framework for energy mastery. And then you can just watch as the obstacles between you and God melt away. That's alchemy. And your spiritual essence erupts and the elements dance to the sovereignty of your loving command. That's the foundation for true alchemy, loving command. So let's have a quick look at the basic principles of the universe again. Yep. Basic principles of the universe. There are 3 elements, no more, in the universe, multiverse, whatever you want to call it. At the top, we have source. This is the first manifestation of the holiest of holies, which is beyond definition, beyond all things comprehensible. But the first foundational manifestation of that is source. Source is love. Source is consciousness. Source is knowing. And we can use the word Father to define it if we want, to help us understand some of its characteristics. So source is the first principle. The second is spirit. Spirit is God in motion. This is motion, power. This is movement. This is the fabric that unites us. It's the waves in the infinite sea. And the third is substance. That's form, matter, particularized reality. Particularized reality. Particularized, made particular, as in no longer one infinite sea of unified oneness, but cheese, Maria, Samantha, a bottle of eggnog, particularized, potential made true. And the dynamic between these is thus: source or consciousness is intention. It commands, it says move, and spirit moves. So love commands spirit to move substance, and things come to form. And substance knows itself and is of God. So we have Father, we have Son, and we have Holy Spirit. This is the Trinity of all things. And these 3 things are distinct yet indivisible. So they are one, but they are distinct, which means they are persons. So this is one God, one body, one everything that we are, three holy persons of God. They are distinct. So all healing and all alchemy, whether it is in your body, in a relationship, or in a world system, or in an ideology, or between people, or through cultures, or across time, all healing has to do with restoring fresh, true particles of God into particularized reality. So if this is all things, if this is source, spirit, and substance, then what we're healing is what is of substance out here. This is an ideology, this is a political system, this is a policy that's just been passed in central government. This is the sore knee that your Auntie Mildred is dealing with. This is the problem between this toxic relationship. These are things in particularized form, in particularized reality. So all alchemy is always about infusing spiritual substance, spirit, source, spirit, and substance into particularized reality. Particle is structure, the philosopher's stone, and spirit is essence, the elixir of life. That's what is always renewing. So when we're looking for the fountain of youth, what we're looking for is the Holy Spirit. That's what has the power to always renew. And there is an omnipresence of spirit in all structure. No structure is devoid of spirit. No structure is separate from spirit, which means that all things have the potential to be infused with the essence of life. So when you combine the elixir of life with the philosopher's stone, right? Stone. That's the philosopher's stone right there, particularized reality. When you combine the elixir of life with the philosopher's stone, you have renewal. So now you have a molecular shift that brings about an outcome that is greater than the sum of its parts. So that's turning lead to gold. Here's a nice way of thinking about it. Healing is giving reality back to God. We're going to examine that a little bit later because it doesn't always mean what we want it to mean. But first, here's a thought experiment. See if you can get your mind around this one. Oh, but first, before I do that, I'm going to show you this again. This is the model of human consciousness from the Sovereign Way. So, source, spirit, and substance. This is the aspect of God that is spirit. So this is the part that is in motion. This is life force. This is never-ending life force. And if this is all consciousness, then this is your consciousness. Your consciousness refracts total potentiality into possibility and creates a life that matches what you have made creative declarations of in your framework of consciousness, not your thoughts, but in your total psychonumismatic coordination, right? To use bigger words than necessary. So we have here the difference. So this, everything below the diamond is particularized reality. All of this below the diamond and below is manifestation. All of this is manifest. Your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, your experiences, they are real. All of these things are real. So all healing and all alchemy is occurring in this universe because this universe is perfect. It is already perfect. So bear that in mind. We're going to come back to that. Here's the thought experiment. See if you can get your mind around this. I love this. This is a thought experiment that I've adapted from the movie called The Two Popes. Fantastic movie. You have to see it if you haven't already. The movie itself juxtaposes the old church and the new church. Institution on structure, the Church of Peter, and intuition and personal experience, the Church of Paul. So we're juxtaposing these two churches. And I think that you will agree when you look out into the world that there is a shift occurring from structure into essence, that we are beginning to soften the walls of rigidity and system, and we're beginning to allow a malleability of knowing. So we're moving from being structurized and orthodox in our spiritual relation to being more gnostic and more experiential in our spiritual interpretation. So the movie called The Two Popes juxtaposes these two churches, the old church of brick and mortar and the new church of spirit. And in this movie, the character Cardinal Bergoglio asks Pope Benedict this question: is it okay to smoke while praying? And the Pope says, no, of course not. That's preposterous. So the Cardinal responds, is it okay to pray while smoking? You can write those two questions down if you like, and look at the difference. What's the difference between smoking while praying and praying while smoking? And why does it matter? Let's look at it like this. In the old way of the world, right? In a framework of consciousness that is dualistic and linear and believes particularized reality over the truth of the Trinity, a reality that looks at what is made manifest and says, this is what's real. This, I am subject to this. In that way of the world, you need to rearrange the circumstances to make space for God. You need to go to the church to be with God. You need to stop smoking so that you can pray. And if you want, you can replace the word God for love, peace, balance, growth, fulfillment, service, abundance, whatever it is to you. But please try to mature out of getting triggered by certain labels. We need labels to communicate. So do your best to forgive the structure that a label is and start connecting with the essence that the label represents. It's the same principle. So if you get triggered by words like God and magic, that's on you, not on the word. So same principle. So in this old dualistic linear consciousness, you cannot smoke while praying. You have to stop smoking so that the circumstances are more aligned with the conduct of prayer. You have to change the circumstances of the world. That's why we have systems and institutions to create pockets of possibility. So you've got to change the things out here to make space for God. That's linear thinking, right? Do not smoke while praying. Stop smoking, then pray. But when you switch the question to, can you pray while smoking? What you're doing is you're knowing the infusion of divinity into the manifest circumstance. That transforms the circumstance. Praying while smoking. Here's a quick case study. You know, we help a lot of clients with addictions in the Sovereign Way, and we have a rather unique approach to dealing with addiction, and it is alchemy, it's infusion. Instead of applying rigid and strict behavioral patterns to stop the behavior, instead we infuse divinity into the behavior, and thus it falls away. For example, we had a client who she was, I don't remember exactly how much she was smoking, how many cigarettes a day she was smoking, but she was smoking maybe half a pack. It doesn't really matter. It was an addiction. It was a behavior that she wanted gone, and she felt shame about it. She didn't enjoy it particularly, but her body would call for it. That's a biochemical impulse. So instead of asking her to put the cigarettes away, what we did was create a ritual or a knowing that during the time that she's in the practice of smoking the cigarette, she would be under the stars, looking at the heavens, praying. So that would be her time of prayer. And very quickly, it fell away. The behavior fell away because it became medicine. And so as she used the medicine, she no longer needed the medicine. By the way, that's the point of medicine, is not to need medicine. That's true medicine right there. We've seen the same thing with alcohol addiction. Some of our clients were able to leave their alcohol addiction, is probably better to say alcohol abuse. They were able to leave their alcohol abuse because they shifted it. Instead of putting it away in a behavioral sense, they infused divinity into it. So they knew it differently. And that changed the circumstance, that transforms the circumstance. That's when things fall away. So it's a little bit like a young child who loves to play with a particular toy will simply outgrow the toy and just put it down and move on. It's alchemy is what's occurring because you're knowing it differently, and that transforms the circumstance. So that's the difference between saying, can you smoke while praying, and can you pray while smoking? So I've used that thought experiment from the movie The Two Popes. And of course, we're not really talking about praying. We're not really talking about smoking, although we are. We're talking about the relationship between particularized reality and the infinite, endless essence of life force, of spiritual life force. And these things coexist. Spirit is not somewhere else. It's not where you go when you die. It is here all the time. And the more you grow in your enlightenment, the deeper you go into your ascension, the more you infuse your knowing of this to be true with your lived, real, manifest experience. So now you have spiritual authority over what is. Let's look at that even deeper. Okay, here we go. Let's look at this one. So truth and falsehood coexist. This is the map of human consciousness by David Hawkins. This is a conceptual scale of 1,000 units. They are arbitrary. They're not actually units of anything, but there's a way of arranging our understanding of to what extent do you know that you are these things? Do you know it a little tiny bit? Oh, it's kind of conceptually, I get it, I suppose. Do you have a tiny little bit? Or like Jesus, 100% integrated knowing that I am that I am. So where are you? Are you a tiny little dot, or are you the full scale of comprehension? That determines where you land on this conceptual scale, where 0 is 100% false and 1,000 is 100% true. But truth and falsehood coexist, and the whole scale in between coexists, because the world is not linear, is it? Knowing this is very important indeed, my friends. If good and evil did not coexist, if they were separate from one another, and that's a good guy over there, and that's a bad guy over there, then the universe would be linear. But who here, hands up if you believe the universe is linear? Anyone? No one. Because it's not, is it? It's quantum. So keep remembering that, because actually the scale doesn't look like this. The scale looks more like this. The scale looks more like this, actually. The whole scale of truth and falsehood, illusion and spirit, is and not is here now. That's powerful alchemy. The whole scale is here now. And with knowing this, you have the power to see, to witness and choose the highest truth in whatever is before you. So when you do that, you change the reality of that circumstance by your presence and your choice. So the higher your log of consciousness, remember, the higher your log of consciousness, the more you get that you are source, spirit, and substance, and so is everything else, the higher your log of consciousness, the stronger your magnetism. So the more you draw out the reality that you align with through the form that is. So the form that is the configuration of particles, of adamantine particles that you see before you, like your diseased knee, or the problem with your toxic relationship with your sister, or the issue with politics in Florida. That's a configuration of particles, of adamantine particles, actually. So the more you are able to understand and agree that all potentials and all possibilities are all wrapped up into every singular pinprick point of reality, the more you are able to exact your spiritual authority to call out the highest possible configuration through what is. Now, this is the most important part. Write this down. The law of non-resistance. This is one of the universal laws of creation, that when you honor it, it allows the flow of truth through any experience of agony and restores it back to sovereign power. Now, that's not the same as complacency. But when we point at something out there and we say, that's not God, what you guys are doing over there is wrong. And right now in this country, in America, we have an incredible separation. We have incredible delineation of two parts. Historians are saying we have two Americas. We have a red America and we have a blue America. And both sides is 100% believing that they are the true America. So both sides are pointing at the other saying, that's not God. Which one's right? This is how we started jihad, people. This is what holy war is made of. Because when we point at something else and we say, that's not God, then what we're doing is crystallizing in our experience something manifest, a structure or a sand dune. Do you remember the visualization about sand dunes? We're going to do that really quickly. So all things are source, spirit, and substance. Source commands the spirit to move the substance. Substance is made of particles. The most basic fundamental manifestation of the body of God is an adamantine particle. Adamantine comes from the root adamant, which is firm. Adam, the first son. So let's imagine adamantine particles are like the sands. This is from Siesta Beach in Sarasota. Imagine the sands of the body of God. Each of these individual sand particles is an adamantine particle. And you can imagine that there's an entire infinite desert. Think of the Sahara. Think of a vast desert made of these adamantine particles. And imagine that consciousness, which is the seed of knowing, which is the Father. Imagine consciousness commands the spirit, and the spirit is the breath of wind that takes the adamantine particles and shapes them. And imagine the sand dunes in the desert. Imagine them rolling. Imagine them becoming a shape and then releasing a shape and becoming something else. That's what particularized reality is. That's what you see. That's what this glass is a collection of adamantine particles. And this essential oil here called purification, that's a collection of adamantine particles. All things are. Your cheese sandwich you're about to have for lunch, adamantine particles. And when you say that over there is not God, and you separate it in your own knowing from the provision of life force, which renews all things, then you're crystallizing that in your experience. So for you now, all pharmaceuticals are bad, or all, I don't know, Democrats are bad, or you're creating a possibility in your life, when actually in all things, is every aspect of the scale between good and evil, between truth and falsehood. All of it is present all the time. And you are drawing out of the adamantine particles by your magnetism the thing which you decree. So this is why very few people are granted the amount of spiritual authority that you are, because it takes a true knowing of yourself and others as being individualized expressions of these things before you can really be compassionate in your creation. That's why there's a difference between true magic and black magic. Because when you try to use vibrational mastery to create what you think is an outcome, what you're doing is digging around in the sand dunes with a bucket and spade. It's frail and it won't last. So when you're creating a separation between anything that you see in particularized reality and the spirit of renewal, you're in error. And by the way, we all do it all the time. So this isn't a slight on you, although I am speaking to you personally, because you have to understand that you are doing this when you're in judgment of anything, whether it's blue or red. You have to understand that when you're in judgment of anything, you're creating in your experience a separation between structure and essence. That's the opposite of alchemy, because alchemy is about merging structure and essence. It's about bringing the philosopher's stone and the elixir of life together. And that's how you create renewal. That's how you create an outcome that's greater than the sum of its parts. But when you put down your resistance to what is, right? Remember, because now we're talking about the law of non-resistance. So when you release your resistance to what is, and you don't get all fighty about whatever policy has just been passed, then you're making that thing available to be replenished with truth. Not crystallized, but becoming. So let's say a policy is made in central government that you don't agree with. The moment you resist it, you have crystallized it. But if you can instead think this is something on the way to becoming what God wants it to be, now you're participating with its growth. So understand the implications of this. The implications are twofold. Implications in relation to your choice making and in relation to you transcending the systems of the world, right? Because that's what you want from your enlightenment. You want to be free. You want to transcend the world. You want to be in the world, but not of the world, right? So if you can understand really the mystery of what alchemy is, of infusing divinity into form, of praying while smoking, then it means that you can actually be fully free inside any agonizing situation with the faith, knowing that the alchemy happens in your true relation with that agony. So we're recording this currently in America. It's Independence Day, 2022. So we're celebrating freedom. We're celebrating independence, that we are no longer governed by a system that is irrelevant to who we are and what we want and where we're going. That's what we're celebrating. And if you really get alchemy, then you have profound sovereign independence from other governing systems that would have you move in a certain way according to its idea of what is good and true. That has nothing to do with who you are and where you're going. Get this, right? Get alchemy. Get how profoundly free you are when you have the ability to infuse anything that is with spiritual life force, with the omnipresence of what renews and restores. No more anxiety, no more desperation, no more incessant planning and organizing and fixing. Because by the law of non-resistance, you choosing the step you take is what leads you right. Do you get that? It's not which step is the right step, which way is the right way. It's the one who chooses it. That's what matters. So when it comes to alchemy, when you choose the step to take, it becomes the right way. That's powerful. Now you're really free. Now you're really free. Now it's not, oh, do I take the job or don't I take the job? Whatever you do, it's going to lead you in deeper into God's will for you. And an even cooler implication, my friends, is that when you get this, you will save souls. You will save souls. Because you'll be able to look at anyone before you and see the Christ within them through their agony. And in your witnessing of that, you will draw that reality out of the current arrangement of particularized reality. Think of Jesus. He just had to walk along. He just had to touch his garment and they were healed by the nature of his presence, by the power of his magnetism. One of my clients was a psychiatrist, studied with me for 5 months, and at the end of 5 months testified that he had become a much better therapist because he had the ability to know his clients through their agony. Whereas before he learned this way, he would try to, as a psychiatrist, he would use cognitive somatic methods, including medication, to try and change the circumstances so that they could be more themselves, right? He was helping them rearrange their thought patterns and their behaviors so that they could be more themselves. Stop smoking so you can start praying. But when he learned this way, he became a much more powerful therapist. All they had to do was come and sit with him for an hour and they would leave transformed. Because by the nature of his magnetism, he's sitting up here somewhere with incredible spiritual authority. They're sitting down here in their agony. And as he witnesses them in their truth, he draws that potential out of them and elevates them on the scale. So he's ascending others simply by sitting across from them. That's alchemy. You will turn every villain into an ally. You will turn every agony into a majesty. Think about that. Now, I know it's tempting to say, I want to reach a state of zero humanness. Right? I am above all things. I'm above the world. I'm an infinite spiritual being floating in oneness. I'm an ascended master. I'm here. There's nothing challenging will ever happen to me ever again. But do not be too perfect in your faith. You must not be perfect in your faith. That's not the point. Because check this out. If you give yourself permission to be okay with oscillating in and out of knowing, oscillating in and out of illusion, oscillating in and out of joy, up and down the scale of consciousness. Imagine yourself doing that like a sewing machine, stitching Christ into the fabric by your true relation with that fabric, even the agonizing part of it. So it's not about you being this holy floaty star above all of humanity. It's about you visiting all realms of consciousness in every pinprick moment, being a conduit for life force through particularized reality, bringing source and spirit into substance. That is glorifying the Father through the Son. That's what that means. The Son is all things in form, and to glorify the Father through the Son. That's true alchemy, and that's what transforms. So, good. It's meaty, but there's a little bit more. Do you need to have a sip of water before we go on? I do. All right, more? Please, sir, can I have some more? Name of the movie. It's Oliver. Who likes that one? So, me too. So in the sovereign way, healing is about restoring truth, right? That's what alchemy is. It's restoring truth, bringing, synthesizing a greater truth than the ingredients that we've got, right? So in other words, we're bringing what is already manifest back into alignment with God's will for it. Sometimes that means bouncing back, like all is well, sudden delivery from what was ailing me, miraculous, spontaneous remission, like my cousin Saint Dorothy Keren, who was resurrected from death after 8 minutes, traveling on the other side, meeting Jesus, being reborn back into her same body, and beginning a healing ministry that lasted the rest of her life. I actually tried to send an email out this morning about Dorothy Keren, but I didn't save the body of the email and I sent something completely irrelevant. I had to turn that agony into majesty pretty quickly. But St. Dorothy Keren was a demonstration of infusion of spirit into form. So the very literal resurrection of some dead structure. Her body had died. The structure is lifeless. But even then, the spirit of life force can infuse that structure and bring it back into renewal. And not only bring her back into the form that she was already in, but restore her perfectly into the true plan for her. And then she went on to conduct a healing ministry that went across the world. There are YouTube videos of her healing people in her congregation. She facilitated countless miracle healings. Countless. So when it comes to alchemy, we're not just turning a rotten apple back into an apple. Now it's become a bushel of apples. It's become a spiritual manna that never ends. But if healing is to restore truth, then sometimes it doesn't mean bouncing back. Sometimes it means leaning in. It means leaning into the tension, into death, out the other side. And I want you to take a moment and just, in your own mind, go back and see if you can count how many of the greatest miracles of your life haven't come from your overcomings. Can you count very many miracles in your life that didn't come from some agony? I bet the majority of the miracles in your life came as a result of you leaning into the tension of your agony. You've been compressed in order to expand. So you must accept that a lot of the healing happens in the agony of tension. And that's where alchemy happens. Think about the crucible. Think about, do you remember in science in like 8th grade where you had to put all the ingredients in the crucible and then you had to apply the heat and the pressure is incredible and you hope you got it right because otherwise it's going to just explode and set the whole lab on fire. But if you did get it right, then you've created something new. You've created something better. And that's what we're doing. So bear this in mind. When you're attempting to use vibrational mastery to restore a manifest thing back to what it was, rather than what it is to become under God's sovereign heart. So when you see things occurring out there in the manifest world that you don't like, and you say, America, we're going the wrong way, we need to go back to how it was before, consider that we need to lean through what is becoming in order for it to synthesize into a higher truth out the other end. When you're using alchemy to create what you think should be, that's sorcery. That doesn't last. It's very fragile because it's false. Because you're using your perception of how things should be. You're looking out here. You're looking through your framework of consciousness. All of those creative declarations that you've made agree with. You're looking through them at something, and you're declaring that it shouldn't be like this. It should be more like this. That's you with a with a bucket and spade in the Sahara Desert trying to make a sandcastle. It might look a little bit like a sandcastle for a while, but it's not going to last. It's sorcery. It doesn't work very well. True alchemy is to restore the manifest back to truth. to give the created back to God. So what you're doing instead is you're witnessing what is from a high understanding that it is merely a configuration of substance inside the trinity of source, spirit, and substance. And as you witness that from a high log of consciousness, you are facilitating the alchemy of that into a higher version of itself. You're turning lead into gold. Right, alchemy isn't just a concept, it's a life mastery. It's something that you need to develop on your life path. It says right there in 1 Corinthians 12, it's part of your soul's spiritual development into wholeness. So you will get this. You are going to get this. It's a part of your destiny to become a powerful alchemist. But to develop a mastery, you need a practice. Let's talk about practice really quickly. This is where Christians sometimes get a little bit wobbly, worried about witchcraft. This is why so many high-vibing mystics avoid churches. There's a lot of judgment around the actual practice of alchemy. But when it comes to practice, there are different ways of developing the art and craft of restoring what is manifest to truth. And in the Sovereign Way, we teach a system of alchemy that uses spiritual healing, Reiki, and simple cognitive somatic practices. Reiki is a spiritually sourced, human transmitted, pulsed electromagnetic wave, usually moving at 7 to 11 hertz, usually a voltage of between 0.3 millivolts to 2.7 volts. And it travels through the practitioner and into the manifestation, whether it's a situation or a body. And it's a way to shift form and energy and behavior into a new framework of consciousness. In other words, it's a way of taking what is here and bringing it into what is here. So it's not changing the configuration of something, it's alchemizing it. It's bringing it into a truer version of itself. And basically facilitating an organic ascension of the sand dune, and thus activating an alchemy that's Holy Spirit led. None of this is unbiblical. Jesus says in the Great Commission that you can tell a spiritual master by these signs. Number one, they will cast out demons, which means to transmute negative energy fields. Number two, they will be able to speak in new tongues, which is light language, which is communicating across linear language barriers. Number three, they will pick up serpents, or to be able to engage with their enemies, to drink any deadly poison and it will not hurt them, he says. And that means another person's malice and spite is like water off a duck's back, because the vibration of it simply cannot exist inside your field of knowing. And he also says that they will lay hands on the sick and the sick will recover. And we do that all the time. So right here in the Great Commission, he's listing the superpowers that you'll see as a result of knowing and practicing true alchemy. And these are all signs of being restored in truth. These are signs of you being a spiritual master. In other words, signs of you knowing to a very high capacity that you are source, spirit, and substance, and all these three things. So there we are. That's an introduction to true alchemy. I can teach you a million more things about it. I can coach you in the development of these higher spiritual gifts. But here are some final thoughts. If alchemy is real, and I assure you that it is, then it is something that has been realized inside the mind and body of God. And that means there is a permissible and anointed way of interfacing with your life. Magic is the result of the ability that you have to extend your most glorious, personal, and unique creative essence in a way that influences the vibrational fabric of your life. It's as unique as your fingerprint is because it comes through your framework of consciousness. In other words, your magic is the result whenever you, by your magnetism, have invoked the presence of spirit through the fabric of creation. And as you are integrating a more and more cohesive mastery of universal truth and endless love, you are increasingly granted command of energy and elements. You are given more spiritual authority to be the wind that blows the sand dunes into new shapes. So the more God's ineffable mystical peace sinks deeper into the flesh, sinks deeper into your bones. And awakened is not just a philosophical term, but is made thoroughly real in every tingling cell. And that tension just melts and you sink deeper into the magic of life. Now you are an alchemist, and things change just by being in your presence. The elements come more alive than ever before. The elements dance in ecstatic submission to your vibration. And Jesus shows up as an utterly and immediately alive presence, and there's no longer anything to do but marvel at the wonders of God taking form through your works. And your magic becomes focused and devotional. And every mundane task becomes an act of worship for the one that you are in true relation with. So that is alchemy. That's an introduction to alchemy. And I'm going to go right back to the beginning. And I'm going to say that alchemy is the merging, the infusion of two ingredients. Do you remember what they are? Hands up if you remember the two ingredients. The philosopher's stone. Good, we've got some hands. The philosopher's stone, which is structure, particularized reality, right? The sand dunes in the Sahara. And the second ingredient is the elixir of life, the never-ending essence, the spiritual life force. And you infuse the two together in order to create a true molecular shift. I'm not talking about when I want to see things differently, that's a little part of it, but I'm talking about genuine impact and influence on the fabric of creation in a way that brings a greater outcome than the sum of the parts. And you can think turning lead into gold. You can think of it like that. So that's what alchemy is. Thank you very much for joining in. If you want to work with me privately to develop this craft, reach out to us. Either you can go to www.sovereignsolutions.day, as in this is the day the Lord has made, or you can reach out to us on Facebook. You can DM us directly. Find a way, just reach out and we can work privately. Or you can join the Oasis, which is a beautiful private study community, and you can learn these things on an ongoing basis within a community. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a beautiful, blessed Independence Day. Celebrate your true freedom, and it has just been a glorious honor to teach you today. I'm now going to turn off the live stream, and we're going to open the table to the students who are present in the Oasis.